Welcome back to another STEM with Miss Dubois video. Today will be an introduction on how to use the Fusion CAD software. That's me, Miss Dubois, so let's begin. This video will cover the basic layout of Fusion and how it works, the functions that you will use nearly every time you make something in Fusion, and then any tips or strategies that I can offer to people new to Fusion. Hey, I'm just jumping in really quickly to tell y'all that before you use any CAD software, 3D, 2D, it doesn't matter which one, you're going to want a mouse that has what I call the clicky-clacky things and a wheel. Basically, this will just help you use the software a lot easier. It can be wired like this, as long as it has the wheel and clicky-clacky things, or it can be Bluetooth like this one. You can use a trackpad. It's just a lot harder and trickier to use. It is possible. Honestly, I just recommend getting one of these. They are compatible with Macs, and it just makes it so much easier. So yeah, let's jump into the video. So I'm actually going to ask you all to pause the video, go to the Fusion app or website, however you're using it, and basically explore Fusion. See what you can make, mess around with it, and then we'll get into all the tips, strategies, and how to use all of the functions and tools that Fusion has to offer. So the first thing that you're going to see is this front, right, and top cube. It's called the cube of orientation. I actually don't know if that's what it's called, but that's the name I give it. And essentially what it does is that it shows you the orientation of your object. The front, right, and top view is your home orientation. Basically, this is how everything will be oriented and how everything wants to be oriented in Fusion. And you can change the orientation just by clicking around on that cube. It's going to be a lot easier to see how this is applied when making objects, when we mess or as we mess through things in Fusion. So before we get into making anything in Fusion, I want to show y'all the create and modify menus in Fusion. This hosts all of the things that you can do while making most objects in Fusion. And a really cool thing is if you do not know what a function or what something does in Fusion, you can actually hold your cursor over it and it gives you a detailed explanation of what it does, and it kind of gives you a glimpse of how to use that function. So when you make anything in Fusion, it's best to start it out as a sketch, and then you just build on from there. So as you see here, I'm actually going to make a sketch of a circle. And when you make a sketch of anything, you can either set the value or how big you want it to be, either by sizing it out, like dragging it out, or by typing in the value. And then each time you finish a sketch, you're going to want to click finish the sketch. That tells the software that you are done with your sketch. And as you saw, it'll actually naturally take you to that home position we were talking about earlier, where it's front, top, right. So the next and my most favorite tool in this whole thing is the offset plane tool. Basically what this does is it enables you to make a sketch on a different plane, but instead of figuring out where that plane goes, you can make an offset plane by just naturally going to the sketch, finding that plane of that sketch, and then lifting up that plane a certain height. And on the offset plane tool, you can make a sketch on that new plane and not have to do a lot of guesswork. And it is the best tool, in my opinion, in Fusion. I love it because it helps you a lot with lofting, which is something that we'll get into later on in this video. So now that I'm in that offset plane, I'm going to make a new sketch. And when you make a new sketch, you get a list of options of everything that you can make a sketch of. Throughout the video, we'll go through a couple of these. But for this video, I'm actually going to be making a polygon. And when you make a polygon, you can either do circumscribed or inscribed. It doesn't necessarily matter, just as long as you know the difference, and you can find that difference by clicking in Fusion. I'm going to make that polygon, and I see that it's currently a hexagon, right? I can see that it's a hexagon because there's 6 sides. But what if I wanted to change the amount of sides? So what I'll do is I'll go to the polygon, and I can actually change the amount of sides by clicking and typing in the amount of sides that I want it to be. And that can turn it into a hexagon or a octagon or pentagon, whatever, a polygon. For this video, I'm actually going to make it a hexagon just because it's going to be a lot easier with using the functions that I want to show y'all later on in the video. Now we get to use my favorite function, which is loft. Loft basically combines the geometries of 2 faces into one cohesive solid. And all you gotta do is click the 2 faces and you loft it. So this solid right here has way too many sharp edges and sides, but what we can do to smooth that all out is fillet it. And despite this being the spelling of the word, it's pronounced fillet, not fillet, because you're not filleting a fish. which annoys me. So now I'm going to fillet these edges, and essentially when you fillet an edge, you are making it smoother by taking these sharp edges and making them rounder. And there's a couple of ways of doing this. The first way is by guessing and just pushing it into the solid, but to be honest, you are most likely going to end up with an error message when you do that. The other way is just assigning that radius value, because that radius value is determining how round that curve or that smooth edge will be. And this way requires a little bit of guess and check, but it honestly does work a lot better and it is a lot more efficient. So I definitely recommend this way. And you can always just edit it depending on how much smoother you want it to be, if it's even possible, because Fusion will limit it and it will tell you when you're wrong by giving you an error code. So as you see here, I'm making sure all of my filleted edges are equal, and if you're following along, you should do the same with your shape. So the next feature that we're going to use is extrude. Extrude, what it does is that it essentially extends the geometry of whatever shape you have made or polygon you have made, and it just keeps the current everything in it. And you can either extend it or cut into an object. It's a really useful tool. In this one, we extended the shape, but in a clip later on in the video, we're actually going to use extrude to cut into something because it can keep that exact geometry. It's a really useful tool. Now, you can either set that height by like pressing tab and typing in the numbers, or you can just extend it like I did in this clip in the video. So in this next part, I'm actually going to speed it up because essentially what you're going to see is a sped up version of me using the Loft tool in a unique way. A really cool thing about the Loft tool is that you can have it go to a specific center point and make it look like a tip. And it's just something really cool. There's nothing really beneficial to it other than it just looks really cool, and I think it looks cool. And that's what I get for messing around and exploring with it. I learned this not by watching videos. I learned this by just messing around with it. So you can learn cool tips and strategies of how dynamic these tools are by just messing around with these functions and seeing what you can do on your own. Here I am using the 3D box solid, and it's very similar to using the sketch function, except it does a lot of the steps in one fell swoop. I prefer the sketch tool because I just like that bit a little bit more. It gives me a little bit more freedom, but to each their own. And with this tool, you can either drag it out, just guess on the sizing, or you can be specific and tab in your dimensions. When you tab in, you type in how big or what size you want it to be and what the proportions are and what the dimensions are. And yeah, essentially the biggest difference between using a preset 3D solid versus a sketch is that the preset 3D solids do a lot of the work for you and combine a lot of the steps. Another unique function in Fusion is that you can actually create a sketch on a plane, which we've already talked about, but you can add it to an existing solid. And with that, you essentially would create a sketch like I'm doing in the video, drag it out, and make that a specific thing. And with that, what you can do is just extrude it and make an even more complicated shape. I want to take a quick sidestep. When adding shapes or sketches to current existing geometries, that triangle just means that you're in the center. The next tool that you'll see me use is the bevel tool. It's a modifying tool technically, and what it does is that it makes that sharp corner into a diagonal corner in a way, making it look kind of like a ramp in a way. That's how I like to describe it. And there's a couple of reasons why you would use this tool. I'm going to use it because in this thing that I'm building, I'm making a food truck, and I thought it looked like a car window. So yeah. So I'm going to emphasize the difference between the press pull tool and the extender tool. The extender tool will extend or cut into anything from a closed geometry. The press pull tool essentially does something very similar, except it won't do all shapes. If it's like a new shape coming on in a solid, like let's just say you added a circle at the top of that food truck that I'm making, it won't extend that, the press pull tool. The extender tool will. It has to be something like the back of that food truck that I'm making. It will press pull that. The extender tool will also cut into most shapes. The press pull tool won't. It will just reset it to how it was. And yeah, the biggest thing with the extender tool is that it has to be a closed geometry or else it will not work. So I'm going to highlight a very helpful sketch tool in this next clip. and that's called the mirror tool. What you will essentially need to do for this is make anything on the other side and then just set a line of mirrorness or an axis, and it will copy over exactly how it is on that side, but onto the other side. It's a really useful tool. You'll see me use it in this clip, and in this clip, you're also going to see me set a construction line. That construction line just doesn't mean that it's shown in the final thing. And you honestly just click it. It's not that hard to use, and it's really easy to use, and it's really, really helpful when using functions like mirror that basically replicate or mirror the other side. I really like the mirror tool. It's very helpful when I need something fast and quick and helpful to do that is symmetrical. So now we're going to see the cut function of extrude. Essentially what you'll have it do is click it or make it a negative number. That will have the closed geometry cut into the other shape. And you can honestly have it click to the other side like I did of that plane. And you just cut something out using extrude. It's really easy and it's really fun. Here I'm going to highlight that wonderful thing called a timeline. That timeline tracks everything you do in Fusion. Let's just say you want to change something. Let's just say you don't like it. You can go to the timeline, change it, and it will affect the end result. Sometimes it will make it go yellow, which means that something is not working and it's not clicking right. We'll see that later on in the video, but it essentially just tracks everything you want to do, and you can click edit feature. It'll let you edit that feature, and then you'll see it in the end result. It is a really, really, really useful tool. I love it. I didn't learn about it until I got way more comfortable with Fusion, but it is a really useful tool because it's just good to know what it does, and it's good to know that you can edit things and not have it be permanent in Fusion. So now we're going to make a football, and we're going to make that football by drawing it on or sketching it on the XZ axis. The XZ axis is just basically where that axis that goes up and the axis that goes across interact and intersect, and we are going to be making an arc. And in that arc, we're going to close a line. And yeah, the new function that we are going to be using is the revolve function. Basically, it just revolves around whatever axis you want it to revolve around. And you can either make it closed and make it look like a football if you do the arc shape that I'm talking about, or you can have it be open and make it revolve a certain length. And essentially, it's just a really cool thing to use if you want a specific geometry or something else. Once again, all these tools that I'm discussing with y'all today are going to have a better detailed explanation in Fusion, and the best way to learn is by exploring and experimenting with Fusion yourself. But this video just kind of shows what they do if you're scared to try it out like I was. Another really cool and useful part of Fusion is that you can give appearances to something to see how they would look in real life, and also to figure out what materials they would have when you are done designing it. And the way you do that is by going to modify, click appearance, type in whatever material is available on Fusion. Fusion has that whole list, and then you click download. Then once it's downloaded, you drag it to the thing that you designed, and boom, it looks like that. And you can see if it works or not. As you will see in this video, I have to go through it a couple of times because I did not like how mine looked at first. But that's the best part about Fusion, is that you can edit it and tweak it as you go along. So in this next part of the video, you're going to see me make a knockoff command hook, right? Basically 3D model command hook. And I'm going to show you a couple of things. But the sketching is pretty much the same, except it's with an ellipse, where I dimension it out because I needed the dimensions specifically. I do recommend that you type out your dimensions if you are looking for specific dimensions. If you're just practicing modeling, designing, it doesn't matter too much, but if you want to build and 3D print something, do type out your dimensions. What you see here is that I do not like how my model lofted. I think it looks ugly. It's not what I was envisioning. So I'm going to go to timeline, edit my sketch, see that my sketch isn't there, so I go to that control panel thing. It's not actually called a control panel. I don't know what it's properly called. I see that my sketch is missing. I click show sketch because what that control panel does is it shows all of the features that aren't like extrusions and stuff of your model. And you can click show, you can click hide. If you're having joint relationships, it will show that as well. And yeah, we'll get into what a joint relationship is and all that stuff later on in a different video. So I'm actually going to fast forward through this part. If you want to follow along, just put the video in a slower speed. But essentially, I'm just setting up my command hook to have the sweep function done to it. The sweep function is essentially where you have a geometry following along a specific pathway. And it's a really useful tool when you use it. I don't use it all the time, but I do know people that do. So here you see me using the sweep function. You're going to see me have an error because I do it wrong. And it's very particular of how it wants it done. Fusion will tell you those error codes when you have them. And I fix it, and then it ultimately looks great. Now, after I fix it, I'm like, ooh, let me mess around with this. And I'm thinking, what if I change the geometry? You're going to see in that timeline that it's yellow, which means that Fusion didn't like that. So what you do when you have the yellow timeline thing is you click on it, and it tells you what it doesn't like. It just brings you back there, though. And then you fix it, and then you can tweak it, and boom, you have the proper function. Your timeline's happy because nothing's yellow, and yeah. Also, I happen to make a command hook, but knockoff version, because, you know, why spend some money at the store if I can 3D print this, you know? And that was STEM with Miss Dubois, and on the introduction to Fusion.